So thank you very much for coming. My name's Dr. R. David Muir. I'm the academic dean here at Christ the Redeemer College. I know many people have come from a long way. We are expecting Pastor Damien Luke from Croydon with his colleague from America, Pastor Joseph Thompson, to join us. This may not be the easiest place to find, but if you can get on the right train, the Piccadilly or the Metropolitan is easy to get here. And I say to people that we're only 2 minutes walk from the station. My wife tells me I'm wrong, it's about 7 minutes, but it depends how slow you walk. Maybe some people walk round. I see, no, right, okay. If you walk straight to maybe 3 minutes. Okay, so that's really good. So welcome again. And at this time, I'm going to call upon our rector or our vice chancellor, Professor Daniel, to come and do a formal welcome. So let's give him a round of applause as he comes, please.
Thank you, colleagues, and I want to welcome our guest speaker tonight. You are welcome to Christ the Redeemer College. I believe this is the first time you are coming here, and definitely not going to be the last time, because we believe that what is beginning today, you'll be part of it as time goes on. So, distinguished guests, colleagues, students, community leaders, counselor, you are welcome, and our friends, Rudy, you are welcome. Good evening, every one of you. And I bring to you Christ Redeemer College warm welcome. It's always a privilege to welcome you to this first day of the center, the official launch of Center for Faith and Public Life. And I'm sincerely delighted that you are able to not only join us, come on time, and be here at the beginning. We also want to welcome those of you online. I believe there are online now, so welcome them. We want to welcome those online. We are glad you joined us. You are not able to join us physically today. We are hoping that you'll be able to join us physically in the next meeting. So we're especially honored to trust the Lord for the opportunity we have, and to say that your presence here today speaks to the shared commitment we have, not only to theological education, but to the impact of theological education on the community where we represent, because that is basically why we are here, and that's what has brought us together. The Center for Faith and Public Life has been established with a clear and timely purpose, just like Dr. Muir will tell us soon, to serve as a center of excellence for community engagement, public policy, research, advocacy, and community engagement. We want to work with the people of the community, find out areas where the college can have impact in the things we do. We do theology, we do business programs, and we believe that the college will have impact in the community where we are represented. At a time when we are facing increasing fragmentation, polarization, and mistrust, the need for thoughtful, value-informed public engagement has never been greater. This center is founded on a simple but powerful conviction that faith communities have an important contribution to make to public life. not in isolation, not in competition, but in collaboration with one another. While rooted in the Christian intellectual and moral traditions, the center is intentionally open, outward facing, and committed to working alongside people of all faith and those without faith. We believe that anything we do can be a blessing to whoever we come in contact with. So we welcome people to listen to what we do, examine what we do, look at what we do, and partake of what we do. As a college, we believe education goes beyond classroom. It must shape character, foster responsibility, and equip individuals to engage constructively with the world around them. The Center for Faith and Public Life reflects the mission of the college by bringing together academic rigor and public engagement, scholarship and service, conviction and dialogue. This evening's program reflects that vision. So you will hear about our objectives, the center's objective, the insight from civic and academic leaders, and a key note that will challenge and inspire us. We hope this will be the beginning of an ongoing conversation, one that will extend beyond just tonight. So I would like to express my sincere thanks to Dr. David Muir, our academic dean, and the team who have worked tirelessly to bring this center and this launch into fruition, as well as our board of trustees for their guidance, their support. You hear from our chairman supporting this initiative. Once again, welcome, and thank you for being part of this important moment in the life of Christ the Redeemer College. I hope this evening will inform, inspire, and encourage each one of us, not only in the environment of academy, but in interpersonal relationships, in engagement with our community, and with ourselves. So let's network, let's talk, get to know ourselves, and let us submit ourselves to God to be used for the blessing of the community where we are planted. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Professor Daniel. I'm going to take maybe 5-6 minutes to say a few things about the center's aims and objectives. Of course, you've got a brochure on your seat, so I don't have to spend too much time talking about the aims and objectives. You'll be able to see all those. So again, echoing Professor Daniel, welcome to Christ the Redeemer College. If this is your first time here, we hope it won't be your last time. This week so far has been quite an interesting one, with varying degrees of drama and seriousness. On Monday, you will remember, we celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, the real prophet of our time. And of course, our real and so-called royal families are having their own particular difficulties. I'm made to understand that Lady Victoria and now Sir David Beckham are having trouble with their firstborn son, who wants nothing to do with them. And Prince Harry, again, is back in the courts, accusing the newspapers of making his life and that of his beloved wife both a misery and a nightmare. And then yesterday at Davos, some of you might have seen it, at the World Economic Forum, President Trump said he wanted Greenland for the US, but he was not going to use force to acquire it. Well, let's wait and see. I couldn't help feeling a little anxious reading a column in the Financial Times last week that said that often the United States intervene around the world without a plan for day 2. Make of that what you will. And then the realization, just in case you were on another planet or decided to switch off to protect your mental health and sanity from the 24 hours news media bombardment. In President Trump's second term, the United States, according to Levitsky and Daniel, in the recent article in our Foreign Affairs, make it quite clear that America is now descended into competitive authoritarianism. And that is a system in which incumbents routinely abuse their power to punish critics and to tilt the playing field against their opposition. Things are changing. While not as noteworthy as some of the aforementioned events, our launch this evening is important for our college, our friends, our colleagues, and the wider community. The Center for Faith and Public Life aims to be a center of excellence, as Dr. Daniel earlier said, for community engagement, for public policy, for research, for advocacy, and for active citizenship for the common good, helping Christians, people of faith and no faith, contribute to a peaceful, prosperous, and cohesive community. The aims and objectives, of course, as I said, are outlined in the program that you've picked up. Therefore, I won't go through those with you, but I do want to talk about the center's main aspirations, or at least one of them, and what we want the center to be. And I would say principally, and this is something that the late Joel Edwards talked about quite a lot, if you're interested in that, in a book he wrote in 2008 entitled Agenda for Change. Place. And these will include conversations about forms of life and solidarity that engender well-being, conversations about health and wealth, conversations about community capital, conversations about health disparities, some of the work that Rudy and his colleagues have been doing for many years now, conversations about the relationship between debt and depression. And our lives are put at risk because people are financially squeezed. And of course, in a higher education environment, these conversations are often controversial issues and themes. Yes, our center wants to be a safe, but a challenging space where controversial conversations take place, a place where you find a community of reflective practitioners, people who think about their work and the meaning of their work, people who are engaged in rigorous and relevant research. It will, of course, be a center where there will be conversational partners and traveling partners. That is, those who offer different perspectives and those who provide practical and institutional support. Therefore, this evening, we are, of course, pleased, as you will hear later on, that the Pentecostal Community Bank, PCB, will work with the college to support our aspirations and assist with financial literacy and business in the community. We're also grateful to the Transatlantic, bit of a mouthful, Transatlantic Roundtable on Religion and Race, TRRR, and Ron will read the statement later, who will be partnering with us, opening up their networks, their program and research and publication opportunities to our students, staff, and community partners. So you can see from the aims, from the objectives, and from some of our partners, some of the things that we'd like the center to do, the center to be. And of course, we'd like all of you to be a part of that. We'd like all of you to feel that CRC can be a space and a place where you can engage in some serious, critical, and dare I say, redemptive work. So once again, thank you for being here tonight. And thank you for giving us of your time so generously. At this time, we're going to have a number of short statements. Some of these will be read. We'll also see a short video from our chair. And It's in no particular order. So I'm going to suggest that maybe we start. I'll tell you what, why don't we start with Councillor Krishna? Yes. Why not? Give him a round of applause to make you feel welcome. Come on. Followed by Dr. Michael.
Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, our Vice Chairman, President, and Professor Francis, and all the dignitaries around here. I had the privilege of walking in last time when the Christ, the Redeemer, honoring all the graduates. That was a stunning day that I can't. It's a it's a milestone celebration. I can't even forget that. But today, I'm even more privileged to be here as you are launching this the faith and community within the education itself. Let me introduce myself. I've been I'm a former mayor of Harrow, as well as I was I was holding a portfolio, cabinet member for so many things, but one of them is community cohesion. Whereas in going back to 2019, when the COVID-19 struck, that is where I started to communicate with all the faiths in Harrow. So I had the privilege of working closely with all the churches, mosque, synagogue, and the Mandir temples and so forth. And there I find that it is very important to have the cohesive approach to understand each and every community. And as I walk in here the other day for the graduation, I would see the diverse community. It's a wider community who has been part of this school. And now you are giving that platform as a faith and community. I have one motto says, living might be a struggle, but life is about faith. Be brave, sincere, and meet the challenge without fear. I think that would also fit into today's agenda, I would say. And also, as Nelson Mandela always say, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. But I slightly changed that phrase because I find that myself, it is not 100% right within my experience. So after saying that to so many schools, I said, now I started to say education and learning, knowledge and experience are the most important ingredients in life. With that only, you will be able to change your community, your country, and even the world can be changed with all that, combining all of that. And I'm thank you for the great opportunity. And I wish you all the very best with this launching. And all the volunteers, I think you have a lot of volunteers around here being part of this. And I always have the phrase for them too. I say, volunteers are the greatest asset for our community and for our country. So give it up for all the volunteers being in here around the country. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. I wonder if we can now have Dr. Michael who's our head of business school, if Dr. Michael will come and read the statement from the Pentecostal Community Bank. You do have it in your brochure, but of course the people online won't be able to see it, but they will be able to hear the support that we're getting from the Pentecostal Community Bank.
Thank you very much, Dr. David. I think he has introduced me already. I don't need to say anything about myself. I just want to say welcome to everyone to this August event, the first of its kind here in this institution. And I'm here to read out the support we are getting from the Pentecostal Community Bank, which has been invited to be a partner with us in this journey. The statement goes this way. It says, good evening to everyone and congratulations to Christ Redeemer College on this launch of its Center for Faith and Public Life. The Pentecostal Community Bank is delighted to send warm support the launch of this core center event. It's an important, key, and timely step, creating a space where faith, learning, and public life can connect in ways that strengthen families and serve the whole community. We know the financial pressure that touch every part of life. It touches family well-being, it touches health, it touches relationship, and even hope for the future. This is why we care deeply about practical financial empowerment, helping people understand money, build confidence, and develop resilience over time. We warmly welcome the center's launch, and we look forward to working with the college, the center, and local partners on shared priorities, promoting financial literacy, encouraging wise financial choices, and supporting stronger household and community well-being. We therefore congratulate the college again on this important milestone and every blessing for the work ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. Unfortunately, our Mayor of Harrow is not with us, but she did send a statement, and we're going to ask one of our staff, Abiola, to come read that for us, please. And this is especially for you people online, so you can actually hear this. The good thing is, most of this will be on our website in due course.
Thank you, Dr. David. I will be reading the acknowledgement from the Mayor of Harrow. It says, I would like to express special thanks to the Rector of Christ the Redeemer College, Professor Daniel Akazeme, and the Academic Dean, David Muir, for their leadership and commitment in establishing the Center for Faith and Public Life. Their vision for the center and its strong emphasis on community engagement in Harrow represents a positive contribution to public life in Harrow, creating a space where faith-based institutions foster cohesion and inclusion is greatly valued. I extend my best wishes for every success at the center as the center begins its work, and I would also like to record my appreciation to all those involved in establishing the center. Your collective efforts, dedication, and collaboration have clearly played a vital role in making this initiative possible. I am confident that the center will serve as a beacon for constructive engagement and will make a lasting impact. Best wishes, Councillor Anjana Patel, Mayor of Harrow.
Thank you. Before our friend Rudy Page comes to say a few words, we're going to have one of our staff members, Dr. Marvin Sanguinetti, who is going to read a statement of support from our friend Sir Stephen Timms, MP, Minister of State for Social Security and Disability.
Thank you. From Sir Stephen Timms, MP, statement of support from Sir Stephen Timms, MP, Minister of State for Social Security and Disability. I warmly welcome the launch of the Centre of Faith and Public Life at Christ Redeemer College, London. At the start of the pandemic, local councils all over Britain turned to churches to help ensure people had food and other basic requirements of life. The all-party parliamentary group on faith and society, which I chaired at the time, published a report in November 2020 on the surge in partnerships between local council and faith groups. Many council officers were astonished at what a positive experience this proved to be. This experience has led to a new awareness among politicians and others of the importance of the contribution of churches to everyday life in their communities. I hope that the new center will help draw further attention to the vital contributions being made in a whole variety of fields, not least on the part of fast-growing Black-led churches, and build a fresh understanding of their unique value in fostering cohesion in the 21st century Britain. I wish the center every success in its important work. Best wishes, Sir Stephen Timms, MP, Minister of State for Social Security and Disability. Thank you.
Some of you might recall that it was Stephen Timms that was brutally stabbed during the surgery in East London. He's a Christian MP, a wonderful man, and a very, very good friend of ours and a good friend of mine. At this time, we're going to have Rudy Page to come and say a few words briefly. Rudy is one of us. He's been working here at the centre for many, many years. He does a lot of work with the NHS. And I'd like Rudy just to say a few words about his own work and some of the things he wants to do here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, and good evening, everyone. So just a little bit about myself. So by professional background, I'm a management consultant. So I've worked in the NHS for over 25 years, worked in regeneration. And my role really is exactly as it says, policy implementation. So I work within the system. So I've worked for the Department of Health and Social Care, Ministry of Justice. So at ministerial level, so doing ministerial appointments and appointments of the most senior leaders in the NHS. So that's non-executive directors, chairman of trusts, and appointing special advisors, to committees like JCVI, NMC, so some of the major institutions. And then at the local institutional level, particularly our NHS trusts, I've worked in the areas of maternity services, pediatrics, mental health, outpatients. So again, being involved in system change, investigations, service area examinations, particularly when there's challenges around equality and diversity. I was also responsible for putting in the original equality and diversity program within the Royal College of Nursing, running workshops in London, Newcastle, Glasgow, Belfast, Mid Wales, the link between the RCN and the Department of Health, working with Dr. Nola Ishmael, so we did a lot of work together. And of recent times now, particularly post COVID, during COVID, I hosted a lot of online sessions, particularly across our churches as well. And we came up with the term trusted messengers and safe spaces. So the church and places of worship, all places of worship are safe spaces. And we use the term, workforce is the community and the community is the workforce. This is really important. And of recent times, I've been responsible for taking a research-based approach to faith-based involvement in our local communities for the last 3 years. And we've focused on prostate health, also on healthy hearts, because obviously, and diabetes, which are major long-term conditions as well. And that's for all communities, but particularly for African and Caribbean communities. And we feel it's important that our places of worship are a place where people, our communities can come and get the information, but not just get information, but to retain the information. Also, the trusted guidance is important from our places of worship. The reason being, we have many, many members who work in the health and social care system who are actually members of our churches as well. So we need to find a way for, as Dr. Nola Ishmael said, we need to get our members of our church, our professional members of our churches, to take the professional message and the health message back into the community. And we believe our places of worship are a safe space for that. And that brings me really to the foundation of the Faith Research Network. Had lots of discussions with Dr. Trevor Adams, so he's a key figure in this network, and in fact invited me to actually come to the college. And I do know of the college because I live 15 minutes away from it, I'll have to confess that way. But most importantly though, obviously the link with Redeemed Christian Church of God. So I've been working with them for the last 15 years. So I'm not unknown to CRC. So the Faith Research Network then was developed by the Academic and Community Research Implementation Program and is supported by the National Institute for Health and Social Care Research. And I would like to thank Pastor Daniel and all the staff at Christ Redeemer College for hosting our launch, particularly Owe. Where's Owe? Where's Owe? Can't see him. Okay. Particularly Owe and the staff members, they've been great in supporting us in terms of the original launch, which is on the 7th of May, 2025, and then the subsequent events and activities that we've been involved in since then. I'd also like to recognize Reverend Ronald Nathan. He's actually, when we did the role of theology and the alignment with public health, he's given us he gave one of the best speeches that really outline what should be the theological approach when we're talking about faith-based care models. So of course the faith-based care model is non-medical. So in the NHS system, it would be regarded as social prescribing care model. In other words, non-medical, and these are really important. And why this center, I believe this center for faith and public health is an idea whose time has come, particularly with its focus on community engagement, research, and active citizenship for the common good, is that the NHS 10-year plan now is about what we call neighborhood health service, the neighborhood health service. Why that's important? Because that means the community sector historically was just called the voluntary community social enterprise sector. It's now the voluntary community faith social enterprise sector. And that's on the previous iteration of the NHS when we had ICBs, integrated care boards. Why this is important now? Because with the integrated shift into the neighborhoods, it means that the faith communities and the places of worship, they in fact already have all the people, all our communities, they already frequent them. So the next step for those of us who are involved in this area of work is how we now bring the traditional providers from the voluntary community to build relationships with the faith community. And then that connection then will go back with the change in the NHS in terms of service delivery and obviously local authorities in terms of public health. So hopefully we will be running some communities of practice. Well, not hopefully, we will be running some community of practice here at the centre. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rudy. We're now going to have our video from our chair. I think the video is about three minutes or thereabouts. Our chair is in Nigeria, isn't he? So is he? A very, very accomplished man. We're very, very pleased to have him. So if the technology will not fail us, we'll be able to see him and hear him and appreciate what he's got to say to us. So Wale, when you're ready, sir, that would be good. And after that, we're going to have Ron Nathan read in the short statement from TRRR before we get on to our keynote speaker. Thank you.
It's my great pleasure, joy, and delight to be associated with the launch today of the Center for Faith and Public Life. The Board of Governors of Christ Redeemer College is very, very much pleased with this initiative that seeks to promote faith. In trying to promote faith, which is a very important topic over the years, as history teaches us that this subject of faith has led to war, has led to conflicts, and now the center is aimed at assembling all people of different faith, different levels, categories of faith, and even those without faith, to come and dialogue, to come together and talk, so that we all do not have to be in agreement on every issue, but at least there's a dialogue. The promotion of dialogue is so important. That is why I am particularly happy that you are guests and colleagues and students and partners and stakeholders are assembled today to do a historic thing of seeking to have a platform for sharing informed knowledge, evidence-based research, composed materials and ideas for sharing. Congratulations. I assure you that the Board of Governors of Christ Redeemer College, indeed the entire Board of Trustees, will give you all the support, all the encouragement and the inspiration that is required for this initiative to succeed. I congratulate all those who have been inspired to launch this center. And I commend all of you, and I know that the Almighty God that has already started it will continue to sustain this for years to come. Thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you. Right, we've got our last statement now from my good friend, Reverend Ron Nathan. Ron is going to read the statement from the Transatlantic Roundtable on Religion and Race. It's been around now since 2013 when I first joined, and I was sponsored to go and speak at with Paul Bosak. Some of you might remember him. Our first time in South Africa, all because of this wonderful group. And we're very much hoping that this college would also be a real significant partner with the Transatlantic Roundtable on Religion and Race. So let's ask Ron to come and read the statement, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. David. Statement on behalf of the Transatlantic Roundtable on Religion and Race. And this comes from our chair of our coordinating committee, Dr. William Acker. On behalf of the Transatlantic Roundtable on Religion and Race, I'd like to congratulate Christ the Redeemer College on the establishment of its new center for faith and public life. The TRRR has, for the past 15 years, played an important role in bringing together academics, faith leaders, community activists, and others to facilitate dialogue and action in relation to issues of faith and justice for people of African descent globally. We have produced a number of publications, convened international conferences, and conducted a number of campaigns highlighting issues from reparations to healthcare. We welcome the establishment of the center and look forward to working in partnership with you and its members in pursuit of equity and social justice for marginalized communities across the globe. Yours sincerely, William Acker and Ronald Nathan, on behalf of the Transatlantic Roundtable on Religion and Race. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I don't want to take too much time because we really want to hear my friend, Professor Francis. I do have a 5-page CV here about Francis, which I'm not going to read, and I've also got a shorter version, which is 3 pages, which I won't read. But what I will say is that this man is a very, very good friend of mine. He's a Catholic theologian, a brilliant activist, and we spent some good years at Roehampton University, where we both were. He was the head of the Catholic College, Digby Stewart College, and I was the head of the Anglican College, Whitelands College. And I'm so pleased that he was able to be with us. He's written lots of things. You can Google him, you can find out. He's taught at Oxford, he's taught at Cambridge. He's written lots of stuff. He's got chapters here, there, and everywhere. But the most important thing is that Francis said yes to us, and he's going to be working with us to do things like getting grants. We need to find money to pay young researchers to do things. We hope that Francis will help us to do all that and much more. He is a social and political scientist, works across government, advised lots of ministers, even presidents, but you wouldn't believe it, maybe you will. Francis was born in Zambia. So in many ways, he's more than one of us. So Francis, without further ado, please come and speak to us, and let's give him a nice warm welcome, please.
Thank you very much for that very kind invitation, David. It's a joy to be here with the rector and distinguished guests, and particularly to be invited by my friend David. I can't think of anyone better to be involved in the leadership of this centre and to drive it forward, because integrity brings new lights to new light, doesn't it? And that's can then shine some new light on the kinds of times that we've got around us. And I'm going to see if this tech works. It's funny, when I saw the pictures of everybody up just now, you could clearly tell that I was the African, couldn't you? And my son has photos of me in Rwanda. I should say that I have mixed race children. So my wife is Singaporean but ethnically Indian. So my kids are various shades from Spanish through to looking like Gandhiji. And so he looks at these pictures of me and you can tell which one's my African dad, can't you? He doesn't stand out in a Rwandan village at all, does he? And so they're all joking about those sorts of things. And we need a bit of laughter, don't we, in the times that we're in? And I'm going to try and think about the times we're in with a spirit of confidence and a spirit of, in one sense, trying to keep the laughter going. When you mentioned graduation, I had to go last January to Bangladesh to a graduation. And as the young in this university, it was most of us a Muslim country, and so they were coming up, all of the students to receive their degrees. But about every 5th or 6th, or maybe every 20th one would lean in whispering, but there'd be a microphone so everyone could hear and go, "I'm a Christian," like this. So about every fifth one, you'd shake, because none of the others would touch you, because that's the custom, right? And they come past. But then suddenly, this young, dynamic woman would, I'm a Christian, and shake your hand. They usually had a baby in one hand and things like that. And so I think some of what I'm going to talk about today is about how we make ourselves public, which is part of the aim of the conference, and then how we make sense in really complex times. I live in Southampton when I'm not in other places, and I live 15-minute walk from the waterside. And one of the things I think of very much is how you can be sea blind when you live on a country or in a country, and how if you live next to the sea, you see the world in a different way because people are coming and people are going. And the other night I went to a talk by the head of the National Crime Agency, and he described how they had tracked a tugboat from Somalia all the way around the top of Africa, all the way through the Mediterranean, all the way to Southampton, stopped about 100 yards from our house, and they took 35 million pounds worth of heroin off it. This little tugboat driven by about 5 uncles over the age of 70. And I learned from this, firstly, that little bit of town I thought of as being a posh part of town was clearly a much more interesting spot to park your boat. Secondly, given that everyone driving it was over 70, there's hope for all of us to launch a business in late life and maybe make some serious money from it, which, given the combination of disciplines that we have here, is important. But that also sometimes when we look at even places that we know really well, we don't know it that well. And where I live, in the neighborhood where I live by choice, it's one of the poorest neighborhoods in the country. If I go south of me, 100 yards, there's the New Testament Church of God. If I go 300 yards the other way, is the Living Word Liberation Center from the Redeemed Christian Church of God. So we're the ham in the middle of the two competing West African churches, or as my kids call them, the loud one and the very, very loud one, right? So it's a joy to be here and to start thinking about what does it mean to kind of really get underneath what's happening in our society at the moment. I have taught business, social enterprise at Cambridge, so I wondered about going in through the business route. I taught theology, as David said, so I wondered about that. And then I thought, well, let's try and combine these two things so it's relevant to kind of the work that you're doing here, but also because it seems to me that, and one of the things I'm going to talk about for a while is institutions, is that one of the ways that we defeat the pessimism that we have around, one of the ways that we respond to the crisis that we have around us, is to mobilize all of the institutions in society to a stronger social purpose. And that does mean the churches, and it does mean the businesses. Now, churches have been very influenced, haven't they, in their thinking since the Second World War by the European Holocaust. Yeah, that created a crisis in particularly Protestant theology with the work of Jürgen Moltmann. For those who read Paul Gilroy, there was another crisis that hit our theology, which is thinking about the Black Atlantic and another Holocaust of brown and black, or black bodies that disappeared into the Atlantic and what came from that. And I accept those crises, but I'm going to be talking about some other crises simply because there are crises that have happened across my lifetime. So since I went to school and after, that have really shaped my thinking, and I think will be able to give us some insight. I should also just say that living in Southampton, we're right next to the Isle of Wight, so we're quite worried that it might be next after Greenland. Oh dear. How do I get that to go back? So, what I'm gonna, wait, does, right, one. No. Can you take it back to the start and then just to the first slide? Yeah, so this one. So a centre like this ought to be thinking really, shouldn't it, about with big ideas, looking at the scripts, behaviours, impacts, and the institutions that we're thinking about, and looking at them in completely fresh ways. And one of the ways that I do this is literally to walk miles and miles and miles around the country, or to swim. So about 10 years ago, I went for a swim, and I swam a mile in every single county and visited one faith-based, one non-faith-based community project in each place. My favourite here, so this is walking through Rory Stewart's constituency. This is doing some work with Ermal Kirby, who some of you may have remembered from the Methodist Church. One of my favorites here is Sir John Battle, another friend of David's, who was the Member of Parliament for Leeds West, Labour. After he stepped down from Parliament, he saved the local swimming pool. And one of the ways that he saved the local swimming pool, I'll come back, was to put classical music concerts on in the middle of a swimming pool. And so this is literally an orchestra in the middle of the swimming pool. And so they would take them out across a special bridge, play Handel's water music, and then charge people double to swim around it. They had the first ever underwater showing of Jaws the movie in the swimming pool. But if you look at a swimming pool, the swimming pool then can be a community hub. During lockdown, the swimming pool was drained and turned into a food bank. Yeah, it can be a community hub. In Cumbria, when I got to Cumbria, the local swimming pool was run by farmers as volunteers and kept open on certain days a week so all the people in the rural areas could go swimming. On Jersey, it was a profit-making for-profit. And then outside was a sea swimming pool that the locals wouldn't swim in because that's where the Nazis used to swim when the Nazis had occupied Jersey. And so it seems to me that when we're thinking big ideas, we need to walk around places that we've looked at in old ways and try and think about them in fresh ways and pay attention to them in completely close and newly observed ways, because that's how we crack open what might actually really be going on. Can I have the next slide, please? So how do we analyze the present moment? And how do we do that in the context of the chains of memory that we bring with us? And in this sense, I don't mean chains like on an Atlantic ship. I mean the chains that link generation to generation. Because sometimes it seems to me that we quite quickly invent tradition. And if you look closely, the tradition that we invented or we were talking about had no real historical roots whatsoever. And then how does this combination of analysis, drawing on our chains of memory, and making sure that the traditions that we're calling from now and digging into in the present are combined, how does that empower you and me to be the change that we were made to be by our Creator? Another way of doing that, okay, a way of describing that is the power of Paula. Paula Med was my youth worker when I was 14. She still rings me every month. She's 90, full of arthritis. She told us that Christianity was about being on the side of the poor and the marginalized. It was about analyzing society to respond to needs. Every single Christmas for 54 years, she cooked meals for the homeless in the city of Portsmouth. She still goes out and tries to do things like that, but she can hardly move now. So this is just the other day. The power of Paula. When I say the thicket is around the corner from my school, there was a synagogue. We used to get invited to the bar mitzvahs. I never knew what a bar mitzvah was, but I had met a load of rabbis before I was 15, so I wasn't frightened of Lord Sachs when I met him later in my ministerial role, because I could tell him stories about being in the thicket as a young lad with my friends. I played serious county badminton. Think of cricket, think of soccer. And who did I meet playing badminton? All the Muslim kids in town, because all their sports heroes and my sports heroes came from Malaysia and Indonesia as a result of looking at the world in a different way because of the sport that I play. Think of the heroes in your family for the kids and the sports and the ones that they're passionate about. So walking, swimming, a sport, it might be a different way in, or it might just be that you've got a Paula ringing up to nag you about your social conscience pretty much every month for about 40 years. Next slide, please. So here's a man with a commitment to tradition. July last year, Dr. Danny Kruger, now a Reform Member of Parliament, stood up in the House of Parliament and gave a speech on beautiful Christian England. He said that the country was founded by the beauties of Christianity, that it had been Christian since the beginning of time, that the English people had had a unique covenant with God, distinctive on the face of this planet, and that that tide of Christendom was being threatened, ... and what we now know is reform will be the way of rebuilding that Christian vision in society. On the internet, this went absolutely crazy. In America, it went completely viral. And the way that this was told on many, many, many global media outlets was this lone Christian prophet stood in an empty parliament, uninterested in Christ or Christendom, preaching to the heathens of the British Parliament and British society about how England, and it was England, he didn't mention the Scots or the colonies or Wales or Ireland, how England could regain this unique covenant with Christ. Now, I've got lots and lots of friends who think that his account of the English narrative is a beautiful one. But there was another Kruger once who stood up in another parliament once and gave a very similar speech once about a unique covenant of the Afrikaner people with Christ. Yeah, and a chap called Verwoerd, who banned the Busacks and the Archbishop Hurleys and the Archbishop Tutus and the other great heroes of the struggle in South Africa because they believed in a Christ that took sides and a Christ who remembered that the Germans invented the concentration camp in Namibia before the British copied it in South Africa, before the British replicated it in Kenya, before it got re-imported back into Germany afterwards with the German colonialists run by a family called Goebbels, with the concentration camps in Namibia, the father of the future leader of the Nazis, coming back round all the way through. So he seemed to forget that in the near abroad of the colonies, a kind of counter narrative had been invented. But he also talked about essentially the covenant between the state and the church. He was essentially talking about an established Christendom, established church, forgetting nonconformity, forgetting that until 1870 it was illegal for a Roman Catholic to go to Oxford or Cambridge, and that most Roman Catholics didn't have the vote till 1920 because they were so poor they didn't meet the property qualification because they were Irish and living on the docks. But next slide, please. This kind of telling of Christianity is not a new thing. This kind of mistaken telling of this perfect Christian culture into which we've walked. And we don't only have to go to the European Holocaust. In 1992, I was working in Bosnia for an NGO. We were funding support for rape survivors and victims. In 1992 was the genocide of Srebrenica, a crisis of the West where Muslim bodies were put to death. And the Dutch cabinet had to resign because Dutch UN soldiers had been standing there watching the Christian nationalist Serbs murder the Muslim Bosniaks. More recently, I've been in Rwanda, funded by Tear Fund, many of whom you'll know, looking at the needs of the elderly 20 years on from the genocide. Huge, widespread psychiatric conditions, lots and lots of poverty, family breakup, the society is aging twice as fast, 3 times as fast as any African country except Botswana, because the whole age structure of the country was changed by the focus of the genocides, murdering. And the thing that struck me most memorably was just how complicit the churches were in the delivery of the genocide. So a crisis of Christianity, say in Holland, because of that cabinet resigning, and of the Orthodox murdering the Bosnians. The planning committee for the genocide had an archbishop on it. He signed the order for the first batch of machetes. 800,000 people put to death in a very short time by hand with knock-on consequences. A bit by contrast here, but an interesting dynamic is in Iraq, 2014 onwards, ISIS invaded the Nineveh plains that you'll know well from scripture. And they particularly attacked the area around Lalish, which is the holy place of the Yazidi people, a local ethnic minority, probably an offshoot of the Zoroastrians. And then they went after the Christians, and they went at pace. And so the Christians fled to Erbil, and the cathedrals and the flats were all turned into kind of refugee centers. I went last year to visit. As we were due to land, the plane had to be rerouted for an hour because 13 intercontinental ballistic missiles landed on Erbil. This was Iran dropping rockets onto the house of someone that they believed to be working with Mossad. We got to go to the tomb of Nahum, which had been kept going by the Jewish community for centuries, not by the Christians. So on the Nineveh plains, Nahum's tomb kept going by the Christians. But three transformative ruptures, three crucial, devastating breaches of brown bodies, of black bodies, and in each case one where the West did not step up, and in each case one where the West had to apologize afterwards. A West that didn't do much in Bosnia at all, from Tony Blair's London, that did nothing in Rwanda, so Clinton and Blair flew in to apologize later, and where no action was taken again. That's the same Christian government that Danny Kruger described as the perfect English embodiment of the soul of the nation. Have the next slide, please. So it seems to me, in thinking about what might be disrupting our faith, we need to think about what the true narratives were around that, of the near abroad, of the colonies, of the crises that are around, and then to think with our social science minds on what other disruptions there might be around. So if I sat with a friend of mine over in the docking lands, he'd blame all the dock closures on capitalists and DP World and other evil corporations. But it seems to me that as well as mapping the crises, we need to map through other institutions like businesses, the disruptors that had huge and profound social consequences that we never even thought about along the way, and that only now. The thing about mine, the combination of miners' wives and their husbands was an incredibly powerful force in democracy, because they were organized and they were co-located with the supplies of coal to stop it going anywhere if you upset them. So the British learned about that very quickly, didn't they? They created compounds for oil around oil wells in Iraq, where the workers were not co-located with the women and where the women were not co-located with the oil wells. Well, what a brilliant innovation here in the good old-fashioned sea container. 22-ton maybe, sea box that goes on all of the ships that come in and out of a port near you. There's an absolutely brilliant book just called The Box by Mark Levinson, 1994. And it's on about how an entrepreneur in the States works out that when he's loading up onto the ships that he owns, he's got to pay one trade union to move the product onto the docks, another one to get it close to the docks, another one to get it onto the ship, then another trade union on the ship to organize it, another one off and up, but about 8 or 9 different sectors. And all of the different product that are being loaded up in kind of like a pile here and a pile there. Fantastic, isn't it? You create the box. Yeah, sorry? One? No, just in one. Yeah, so you create one unit, you can put one product in, it can now then be lined up with the railways, it can be shipped from the Midwest all the way up to the ports, loaded up by a machine, and then, like you say, one operator for the whole process, and that operator doesn't even need to be on the docks. And then not only that, but you can then close all of the docks in the middle of the town, which is what they did in London and in New York. So you haven't got the democratic co-location of all those difficult dockers and their wives. And you can move the port outside of town to a mechanized, completely discrete, securitized place. Now, I've never heard a sermon on social disruption of our society or the working lives of Christians or people of faith about the box. Now, but AI and digital firms, there's suddenly an industry springing up, isn't there, to analyze them. But what other innovations are there that we could map, that we could learn from, that have as big global disrupting effect as the crisis of a genocide or some other kind of crisis? And this is important when we go into communities such as these. Yeah, there is a house like this in Portsmouth. I run past it every year in the Great South Run. And they put all these flags up because they're all ex-sailors that live in the house, and they want to celebrate everybody running for a military charity. And if you've got the T-shirt on for Combat Stress or one of the other military charities, then they'll run out with a cup of tea and they'll give you sweets and they'll cheer you on and they'll play you extra music. In my case, it's usually something like Come On Fatty, Lip Up Fatty by the Bad Manners, right? Joyful, celebratory, healthy, progressive England. They've been away on service, they've come back. There's a house like this in the west of my city, and the man that lives in it is an organizer for Tommy Robinson, who's pictured here at his Unite the Kingdom Christmas Carol. Now, what's the link between that unhealthy England, definition of England, this unhealthy definition of England, and Danny Kruger? Well, they both think the country's got a unique covenant. They both think that they're Orthodox and authentic Christians. Next slide. But they are not new, which is what all the church leaders have been saying at the moment. We have to condemn them, we have to criticize them, because this is a new force in society. In 1989, at the Institute for Economic Affairs, I sat quietly in a corner listening to people talking. This is a right-wing conservative think tank, talking about the need to create a long march through the institutions to capture the leadership of the churches and of politics for the Christian right. Some of the people that were in that seminar are now Lord Brian Griffiths, the well-known conservative ex-head of policy to Mrs. Thatcher, Professor Philip Booth, current head of policy at the Catholic Bishops' Conference. They had a long march through the institutions to try and capture deliberately some of our religious institutions. In 1992, Tim Montgomery launched the Conservative Christian Fellowship with support from the Christian right over in the States. It stayed constantly in touch. Tim Montgomery, who's recently joined Reform, has recently launched Reform's Christian Fellowship. What's the link? They are consistently funded by Lord Farmer, who is a conservative evangelical right-leaning member of the House of Lords. And then the new think tank for reform is funded by David Liddell and Mark Thompson, who both worked with Lord Farmer in the city with a chap called Nigel Farage. And these were known collectively in the city as the God Squad, right? Because they were very Christian, very conservative, and so these are friends with these. These are co-located with another think tank in this space called the Acton Institute, that wants to raise up a generation of right-leaning Christians. And then in turn, they then connect with a whole new ecosystem of donors and funders who are highly organized. James Orr is the big new intellectual supporting reform out of Cambridge. He's a theologian, writing lots of things in the same manner as Danny Kruger. And Paul Marshall, who's a hedge fund multimillionaire, funded Danny Kruger when he wanted to work in the voluntary sector, supported him politically when he was trying to make his political career, has created Unheard, which is the right-leaning website, has funded lots of reform initiatives, and has funded the Centre for Cultural Witness and a whole series of initiatives in that space next to Holy Trinity Brompton. The Centre for Cultural Witness, for those who don't know it, is a pro-market, right-leaning centre led by Bishop Graham Tomalin, which gets even more interesting when you look at its trustees at the Charity Commission, because they include lots of Liz Truss's special advisors and most favourite members of the House of Lords. So this is a friendship group. At one level, we might have said 5 years ago, these are all nice, good Christian people doing the good work of the coalition and the good work of the Conservative administrations. But I think what I'd want to suggest is that underneath Danny Kruger's long, gentle English narrative and the absent violence of the colonies and the absent violence of what the Box did is the absent violence of what really intensely organized commitment to the right is. And we're not dealing here with traditional conservatives. Not even Eric Pickles, who I used to work with, would feel comfortable in the company of some of these folk when they really get enthusiastic. We have to remember we're in the times, aren't we, that Theresa May is now a dangerous left-winger because of the way that things have changed beyond the confines of the Conservative Party. So don't think I'm having a go at some of those traditional parties, because I've worked closely with all of them. Can I have the next one? And why is this important? Well, it seems to me to be important because if you've got a very gentle narrative of a covenant with the nation, which isn't dealing with its real history and isn't dealing with the grievances that some of those white working class communities have, then it's then no wonder that you miss the leap in race crime, the leap in anti-Muslim hate, or the leap in anti-Semitism. And then it's no wonder then that no one's done any thinking about how, when global events occur, how that might generate additional tension, strife, and conflict on the ground. And I was very pleased on Tuesday to be at the launch of a new commission that's going to look at the links between international events and local grievances. And kid me not, I won't kid you not, that's not just Gaza. Yeah, it's not just Kashmir. In the French-speaking Catholic Church just off Trafalgar Square, they've literally had fights in the middle of the service because they've just said, we're a French-speaking church, we can have anyone from any part of Congo, DRC, in our church, and then wondered why there might be tensions between refugees from different parts of the DRC. Yeah, think of that in the Nigerian context when you have those who are very relaxed with Muslims and those who aren't. But if you go with this funny English narrative and you skip the fact that the right's been very organized and interlocking, and Tommy Robinson is praising reform, you end up missing all of this, and the crises of our times are beyond our reach. So, it seems to me the key critical differentiators for the future are theologically, or in terms of leadership of any institution, so the way that we build enterprises of any kind and lead large organizations, whether in the NHS, like we were hearing from earlier, or corporates, is what's our attitude to capitalisms? Not just that there's one, but we're going to choose a way to lead an organization with an intense ethical social purpose. You can feel the difference in the firms that you walk into that have made that central to their core and those that can't. To markets and to whether social inequality is acceptable or just an accidental consequence of the way we set things up. What's our attitude to health and human rights and those health inequalities we mentioned earlier? What's our attitude to the accountability of the church and firms? So, child abuse crisis in the Catholic Church, it's a theological problem, so we'll pray about it. We won't put new policies in for years. Yeah? Crisis of violence in another Christian community because there's conflict between two different parts of Africa that have come together and some white pastor hasn't clocked that that might be going on. Well, we'll just pray about it and not actually address some of the fundamental things that are going. So there's something here about how we can measure and enable the church to be accountable for its strengths and for its weaknesses in ways that sometimes we duck. And central that, seems to me, are about looking again so that the knowledge that we're drawing on, whether that's scripture or whether that's the neighborhoods in which we live in, crack open new insights for what place really means, what memory really means, and really important, maybe for a college like this, but for other communities as well, is what does it really mean to be part of a diaspora? And when you talk about the tradition of the diaspora, what does that really mean in practice and in terms of how you then work that out in the family? My friend Anthony Reddy, who's now the Professor of Black Theology at Oxford, got very upset with me because when we did our study of Rwandan elders, we discovered that the young people in the villages were going up to the capital and they weren't sending money back to their parents back home. Yeah, or that they were going abroad and not sending money back. And Anthony had been told by his mother in Bradford when he was growing up that what African people do is they look after their elders. And do you know what we discovered in the churches? Was that almost every month there were sermons, how we honor our elders. But the pastors had not noticed that the elders weren't coming anymore because blood pressure was too high and they couldn't walk on their own. Yeah? And so they didn't pick up the fact that the children weren't sending remittances back. And so they had elderly mothers in the villages unfed. So, radical solution to that. What was the invention to respond to it in that case? After choir practice, you all had to go cook a meal for an elderly person somewhere in the village, make sure they were fed, and go get them some water. And if you couldn't, you get one of your kids to bring that woman some water, so she's got water and she's got food. So it's about how we invent our tradition here as England, how we invent our traditions and memories in relation to other places, and how we get that analysis and those accountabilities right. Very quickly, the church all over the world is innovating, making interesting things happen, and doing this stuff already. And what a center like this can do is collect all the good stories. You know, Harvard has an innovation lab where it gathers all of the best innovations that government comes up to, so they can then share that information with other parts of the world so government can replicate that. There are loads of similar things in case studies, apart from anything else in teaching in business schools. So rarely would you get a business case about something amazing done by the churches or something like that written up for a theology course. Just a couple. In Vienna, local NGOs went to Erste Bank. Erste Bank is the NatWest, no, more like the nationwide of Vienna, and it trades all the way across Southeast Europe. Huge, huge, huge successful bank, and said, we've got refugees who are unbanked, lots of them. Because they're unbanked, they have to pay more for their electric. They can't get proper rental properties. And when they have their phone go wrong or something, it's more of a crisis than it needs to be if they could then have a little micro loan or something like that. So Erste Bank, which means first bank, got together volunteers from all the other banks in Austria. And when they closed at 4 o'clock each day, they opened Second Bank. And Second Bank was a not-for-profit social enterprise bank that used their existing branch structure and all the tech. And people came to staff it up from all the banks, not just their own bank. And when you opened a bank account in it, you could only do that if you're a refugee. You would get a circle of support around you from the churches who would work with you on debt, who would work with you on your rent, who would work with you on your shoes, who would work with you on a little bit of a savings plan. They've taken 250,000 people back into banking and into work. It's worked so successfully, they're now rolling it out, similar to some of the microfinance institutions you get in Africa, across the whole of Eastern Europe on a phone-based system. Churches working in partnership with a bank at scale, not written up in English, or hardly. Paul Boateng, this is the leadership piece. When he was about 23, he was a really apparently wild guy. But some people were trying to set up the Wandsworth Council on Community Relations. And he applied for the job. Next door was the Clapham Community Project. Someone called Claire Short applied for the job. The committee of well-meaning folk were all horrified about how full-on Paul Boateng was, and they were even more horrified by how full-on Claire Short was. And the managing director of a printing company in Clapham, a guy called Bernard Batley, said, no. This is the new zeal. This is the new mission. This is the new generation rising. It'll be like riding a Bocking Bronco. We need to back him. So they gave Boateng his first job, Wandsworth Community Relations, and Claire Short. The rest is history. That print managing director had become a Christian listening to the preaching of Donald Soper on how the purpose of the mission of the churches is to stand alongside the oppressed, not to only raise themselves up in the opposite direction. So we've invented great institutions. We are doing so all the time. And at the local level, when we shape great leaders, they do great things of transformational kinds, even when they think that they're just backing a passionate young men because we got the values orientation right within them. So who raises up the next generation of innovators? Who brings together the smartest and best from this college and puts a platform under them to accelerate some of the challenges that they face in careers time? In 2004, I set up from Cambridge a thing called the International Young Leaders Network that ran for 20 years, whose mission was to identify, nurture, train, and sustain young and emerging Christian leaders globally. The only question we asked on the way in was, what's the biggest challenge you've ever faced? And we interviewed everybody because we were looking for talent. Some said the biggest challenge I ever faced was my bar exams. Some said it was standing for the council. My favorite was a young fella called Andy, who'd grown up in care, and they came from all over the world. And when I said to Andy, what's the biggest challenge you've ever faced? He said, explaining to a judge at 15 why I was driving an Audi. And I said, well, what on earth did you say to the judge about why you were driving an Audi at 15? He said, I told the judge I was driving the Audi to replace the Capri I'd been driving since I was 12. And he had a bit of a record, and we took him on. And a brilliant South African guy took him on as a mentor because they were the two that smoked. And he now runs the non-profit that owned the care home in which he grew up. And his brother, his twin brother, he's mentored to buy a pub nearby, and they run a business. And he's married a nurse and has 2 kids and spends a lot of time mentoring kids like him to try and take the next step forward. So there are these institutions. Ken Leach founded Centrepoint. He also wrote some spiritual books, like this Second Savings Bank, like this leader in only a 60 people printing firm, but who set free Boateng and Short to go make the contribution that they made. And then there are networks that need to be built around every place to set the next generation free. Next slide, please. So within this, just a quick one here, you can read these articles. It seems to me that one of the challenges that we need to face, having talked about the leadership and the business and the social purpose dimension, is how we make our theology a lot tougher about responding to some of these challenges and into the place that we've done. And one of my critiques of political theology is that lots of people who write political theology, which is ostensibly about theological thinking about the society that we're in, when you look at all of the major journals, or you look even at the brand new book, What is Political Theology, that's just out in the last couple of days from Professor Luke Breverton at the University of Oxford, the only politics they've read is political theory. Now, if I went into a politics or a management department, imagine it in a business school, and I said, this is business theology, but all you'd ever read was the ethics of margins, of profit margins, but you'd never done financial strategy, you'd never done marketing, you'd never done people, you'd never done IT, I'd go, that's not business theology. I'd say that's ethics theology about business. Well, with political theology, it seems to me we have a similar kind of problem, where a better example still would be health. If a podiatrist wrote something on the theology of podiatry and then said that is health theology, Obs and Guiney would look at him and go, what? And the heart surgeon would go, what? And the public health guy would go, what? It seems to me in political theology, we don't only need to read political theory to test our theology and make it relevant for the new world. We need to look at those other skills within political science about budgets, about networks, about power, about the management of the state and leadership of state institutions, about social purpose in local government, and bring that together so that we can have an ethical political theology, absolutely, but also a concrete one that feeds those who need to organize for change, who need to innovate for transformation, who need to lead with a really intense social purpose. Next slide, please. Which brings me back to Paula. Paula's a single woman who's dedicated her life to young people. But she told us so young, it's about service to the weakest. And so it seems to me that one thing we can encourage people to do is something that I came across in my home city and then copied, which was a young couple, also inspired by Paula, who when they got married, did the usual wedding vows, and then added some vows. And I quote what those vows are. And moreover, we commit ourselves wherever possible to promote the needs of the poor before the wants of the rich, the freedom of the weak before the liberty of the powerful, and to stand with the poor as they struggle for their stake in society, and to live our lives as a couple, as a witness to hospitality in our home to those who have least. That couple, 35 years later, founded businesses with a social purpose, transformed the local homeless provision in the city, and a whole series of other couples have taken vows like that because of that one-time commitment that they've made known in the city. So we can build big institutions like a social bank, innovative institutions like a microfinance institution. We can lead in a smaller organization, but we can set the example in our families and in our churches and our neighborhood too. And it seems to me that that's the way that we bring together politics and business in a spirit of transformation at a time of crisis, because parts of the church have got wrong. And so the church needs to put right the parts of the church that have got wrong in the process of transforming the society at the same time. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Francis. Lots to think about. Thank you very much for that. I wonder if we probably just got about 5 minutes for a couple of questions. Do we have anyone online who would like to ask a question? No one online? Maybe I'll tell you what, yeah, let's just take one question here. If you've got a burning question for Professor Francis, please, you can raise it, because we do want to finish at 8, because people are online, that was the time. All of this will be on our website, so you'll be able to get all this, and we hope that our comms people will be able to put the speech on the website as well, so we can look at this again. Do we have a question for Professor Francis? Okay, now I just want to say, not a question, just an observation. Institutions of hope, that's what we want to be. That's what we want to become. The great Napoleon said that leaders are dealers in hope. And we all know we need so much hope now. And I love the Paula story. It reminds us of the scripture, what does God require of thee, O man? Do good and to love your God. I mean, basic stuff. So Francis, thank you very much for that. You've given us a lot to actually think about. And, the struggle continues. And justice is something that we, as people of faith and people of no faith, we see that as being central to who we are and what we must do. And we're hoping that our center will be that space, that place where people can come and be challenged, but also be encouraged, get new perspectives, get new insight into our common life and the common good. So, Professor, my friend, thank you very much for that. That was so rich, so mind-blowing in parts. And we forget about Rwanda. Well, yes, we know about the Reconciliation Commission and all those things, but those deep wounds are actually still there. So this time I'm going to ask our rector, Professor Daniel, to come and give a vote of thanks and to give our final prayer before we go. Thank you, Professor. Let's make him feel welcome.
Yeah, so much in such a short time, and so much to think about. And I believe that for those of us in the college, we are going to spend some time looking at what you have said, the issues we have raised, possibly identify areas we disagree and areas we agree. But thank you so much, Professor Davis, for a brilliant presentation and for being part of our story. And we believe that you will continue to be part of our story. And I know that you travel long distance to come here. Thank you so much for the sacrifice. We appreciate. I want to thank our friends and our colleagues online. I believe that you have got something to think about and something to remember. Like has been said, you will have copies online, so you can always come back to it at your own time. And if you do have any question, I'm glad that Professor Davis is a friend of Dr. Muir. So if you send us any question for him, I'm sure that he'll be glad to respond. And those of us here, thank you so much for the time you have spent to come here. I appreciate your time. Counselor, thank you for coming. And our good friends, thank you for coming. We plan that this will continue over the year, and we'll see you next time. So we do appreciate you, and thank you very much. Have a brilliant evening, and have a very good night. Thank you. So we just say a final word of prayer, and dear Lord, we want to thank you so much for the opportunity we have today. We thank you that we thought about establishing this center, we planned about establishing it, and today it has come to reality. We thank you for everyone that has been part of the planning, part of the arrangements and everything. We just ask that you will bless them. And we pray that you will bless this college. Help us, Lord, to be a true center of research into the public life, research into how the church can integrate and engage with the community. Thank you, Lord, for hearing us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Rudy, thank you. Thank you, dear brother, and the Lord bless you.